right. Well, we are in the middle of a message series right now, Becoming Who We Are. We've been talking about it a ton. And basically, all it is just this idea that we want to become more and more like Jesus. And so we've been going through these 5 discipleship rhythms and kind of focusing on different things every week. This week, we're on community with a few. But we're going to do it a little differently because this week we're going to talk about it, and then we're also going to talk about it next week when Brent preaches. So this week, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be looking at and trying to answer the question, what does God say about community? Like out of the scriptures, as we learn and study about that, what does God teach us about having community with a few? And then next week when Brent speaks, we're going to talk about, in light of that fact of what God says, how do we at SouthRidge do that? How do we have faithful biblical community here at SouthRidge because of all these things that we know? So I have 4 things that God says about community that I think that we need to know. But before I go into those things, I need you guys just to know, before all of that this is not an exhaustive list that I've put together here, okay? So if at the end of my message, if I haven't hit the 4 things that you wanted, or if I miss something that you think is important and you're like upset or mad at me, I want you to know that's okay. That's fine. As a matter of fact, I would welcome that feedback, that criticism. We love it when you guys do that. You can email me with your complaints. My email address is brent@southridgefellowship.ca. You send that to me, I'll send you a response within 30 minutes. Brent, why doesn't Craig preach anymore? Oh, this is why. There's a recent study that found that 60% of people who watch TV report that they binge watch shows, right? So that means they watch it multiple episodes in one sitting, just next episode, next episode, next episode. And 45% of those people admit to canceling their social plans to continue binge watching. Now, I don't know if this has ever happened to you. Follow me for a second. You're watching a show, the episode just finishes. You're gripped, right? You want to know what's next. Next episode, that button's right there. And you look down at the time and you're like, oh, shoot, I have to go soon. I'm not going to have time to watch a full episode because I got these plans with my friends or something. And then all of a sudden your phone dings. And it's like your buddy canceling on you. And you're just like, yes. I knew there was somebody else out there that's been like that. I like watching The Office. It's my favorite TV show to watch. There's 9 seasons. It took 9 years to film that thing. I probably watched it 5 or 6 times. My favorite show to watch by far. But every time I finish watching the whole thing, I'm sad. Because I've made this connection with these characters, right? And in some ways, I know these fake characters' lives better than I know my real friends' real lives. And then I finish the season, or I finish the show, and then all of a sudden I'm sad because these characters are just, they're gone. Unless you rewatch right away, but then you really have a problem and you need to stop. And so I finish it and then I'm sad because they're gone. And there's nothing wrong with watching TV or connecting with characters when you're watching shows or YouTube or whatever it is. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that we need to understand what's happening, what's going on in that moment, what that's doing to us, because it has an effect on us, and I think we need to understand that so that we can be careful that doesn't become an unhealthy pattern or coping mechanism in our lives. Here's another example of something else. I don't post to social media a ton, and that's not me trying to brag or anything. I just don't really like it. I think it's been almost a year since I've posted on Instagram. I really don't care for that. And so a couple weeks ago, I was going to the gym, and it was weird because I was going without Carrie, my wife, and I don't really go to the gym unless Carrie makes me. But anyway, so I was going to the gym one day, and Carrie wasn't there, and I finished a run, and I was pretty pumped about it because I have these shin splints, I'm dealing some stuff, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I got this run. There's no pain. And then I pulled out my phone because I wanted to post something on Instagram, and I was like, wait a minute. Why do you want to post something on Instagram? You never want to do this, Craig. What's going on? And I realized that in that moment, I wanted to post something on social media because I wanted to share my experience. Because usually I've carried that. I'm like, hey, babe, guess what happened? Blah, blah, blah. But in this moment, I didn't, and I wanted to share that. I wanted somebody else to know what I was going through. No matter how introverted or independent you are, right? It doesn't matter if you don't have a lot of friends, you're a hermit. I totally get it. I don't have a lot of friends. My brother was the best man at my wedding. I'm not good at making friends. It's not my forte. And so, but no matter how independent or introverted you are, and I'm with you on that, you need community. You need, even if it's just one person, you need relationships and community. In Western society, we have an abundance of connections. There's a never-ending supply of TV shows and YouTube vloggers who will take you through their whole lives, and you'll know every detail of every day of what's going on with them. There's no shortage of connection available to us here. Yet we are growing up in one of the most lonely, isolated, anxious, and depressed generations. 2017 study from the American Journal of Preventive Medicine says this, that there's a direct correlation between people's excessive use of social media and their perceived loneliness. Now, social media is not a bad thing, but they've found through studies that there's a direct correlation between people using social media excessively to usually replace these connections that happen organically and naturally in person. The more you use social media, and especially when it becomes excessive, that it actually has a detrimental effect on how lonely and how isolated and how depressed or anxious you feel. And I think just like TV shows and these characters, we find connections naturally, right? The world we live in is full of us knowing other people. I know Jim and Pam, and I know their last names better than I know, and their lives better than I know some people in my real life. And we go out and we find those things naturally. When we're left on autopilot, we will just go out and find connections. It feels good, it's fun and exciting for us. So we will go out and find connections naturally, but what doesn't happen naturally is allowing ourselves to be known. So you can have all these connections, right? You can be the person who knows everybody. You can have all the friends. You can be that guy who walks down, oh, hey, how's it going? You know everybody. You got all these friendships, all these relationships. Nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, if that's all it is, if it's just you having a bunch of connections, but you not being known yourself, then those connections won't mean very much, because value comes with vulnerability. In those relationships that you have, the lasting value that actually makes them mean something, that comes with vulnerability. That comes with you being known by them. And I think God shows us this in Scripture all over, how his model of community involves us being known. Psalm 139, verse 15 and 16. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion. As I was woven together in the dark of the womb, you saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. Matthew 6, verse 7 and 8 goes on to say, and when you pray, do not keep babbling on like pagans, for they think that they will be heard because of all the many words that they say. Do not be like them. And this is the important part. If you have a pen, underline this in your Bible. For the Father knows what you need before you ask him. Matthew 6, verse 7 and 8. For the Father knows what you need before you even ask him. See, what makes Christianity so different from all the other faiths and all the other worldviews and all these things is that God's not interested in just like ladening you down with a bunch of rules and, oh, you have to dress this way, or you can't say those words, or you have to give money to these things. God's not interested in you just reading the Bible and getting to know him. God actually knows you. God wants a relationship with you, personally, individually. God's model for community is not just us knowing him, but also him knowing us. Authentic community, this is the first point if you're taking notes. Authentic community requires connection and vulnerability. To say it another way, the authentic community that we need as individuals, we crave this, we need this, requires both knowing and being known. And sometimes, just like my social media, right? Sometimes there's a temptation for us to go out and find these connections. But if we're not careful and if we keep replacing real, organic, in-person connections with like the synthetic TV, social media version of it, and it replaces those real, authentic relationships, it actually has a detrimental effect. And social media is not bad. It's been shown to actually have good impacts on us if we use it properly and in a really good way. But if we're not careful, if it becomes something that replaces it, when our lives just get filled with connection, and we start lacking true, authentic vulnerability, it can have really negative effects on us. And so for some of you guys here today, this is all you need to hear. Right? Some of you guys, this is the end of the message. You guys can check out for the next 15 minutes. I'll keep going, but you're done because you're the caretakers. right? You guys, you're the givers. You have all these connections. You're in a community. You have all these friendships, but it's always about them. Every time that you guys meet up in whatever your community groups or women's Bible studies, whatever it is, it's always somebody else talking and sharing what's going through, and you're the listener. You're the caretaker. You're the ear that hears everything. And maybe you don't want to be vulnerable with people. You don't want to engage in that vulnerability. Maybe it's because you think, oh, you know what's going on in my life? It's not that bad. Like, I shouldn't be a complainer. I should just be thankful for the life that I have because it's not that bad. Or maybe you don't want to be a burden to people. Or you don't want to be selfish, make it all about yourself for a change. Maybe you're just scared that if you show people those cracks in your life, if you show them what you're going through, I don't know, like they won't like you anymore, or love you, or accept you. And whatever the reason is, if that's you here today, that I think what God is calling you to do is take that first vulnerable step of allowing yourself to be known. In those communities that you already have, taking that step of allowing yourself not just to connect with the other person, but allowing them to know what's going on with you. Practicing that intentional practice of vulnerability. The second thing that God says about vulnerability that I think that we need to know here today is that you were designed for it. You were actually designed for community. God made you with the explicit intention that you would be relational, that you would be in community. Genesis 2:8 says this, the Lord God said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." And so let's just back up a minute. I'll take you through the story a little bit. So this is like 2 chapters in. We're right at the beginning of the story. God makes the world, right? So he makes the earth and the heavens and the stars and all these things. And he says, it's good. It's a good thing. It's a good setup. Okay. And he makes day and night and the sun and the moon. And it's good. And water and land. And he separates the oceans from the continents. And it's good. And vegetation and plants like Brussels sprouts and broccoli, and somehow it's still good, but okay, let's keep it going. And then animals and livestock, and think about this, the naked mole rat, and it's still good. We're doing pretty well here. And then animals, Adam, right? Adam comes onto the scene. He throws him in the Garden of Eden, and it's a great place. There are trees, there's abundance, and there's no sin. Like, Eve's not here yet. Not that she's sin, but the little snake hasn't come. The apple, we haven't given God the old, screw you, Dad. And so there's no sin at this point in the story. But God says it's not good. God says it's not good for the man to be alone. John Ortberg has a quote. It's an incredible quote. It's a little long. It's actually a 3-slider. So hang with me on this, all right? But here we go. So he says, what is striking is that the fall has not yet occurred at this moment. There is no sin, no disobedience, nothing to mar the relationship between God and man. The human being is in a state of perfect intimacy with God. He is known and loved to the core of his being by his omniscient, love-filled creator. Yet the word God uses to describe him is alone. And God says this aloneness is not good. He goes on to say, sometimes in church circles when people feel lonely, we will tell them not to expect too much from human relationships, right? That there is inside every human being a God-shaped void that no person can fill. And this is true, and this is the part right here. But apparently, according to the writer of Genesis, God creates inside this man a kind of human-shaped void that God himself will not fill. You were designed explicitly, intentionally to be in community. And whether or not you get married or have kids, no matter what stage of life that you are in, you were put on this earth to be a part of other people's lives. David Kinnaman, he's the president of the Barna Research Group. He notes, one of the books I've read, that there's a pronounced trend of people leaving the church. I don't know the exact number, but in college I learned that for about every 20,000 churches that get planted, about 50,000 close. So, not a great ratio. I'm probably on the right line of work. So there's a pronounced trend of people leaving the church. And I think sometimes, not every time, because there's a lot of reasons, but I think sometimes why people walk away from the church is because their expectations don't match their experience. And here's what I mean by this. the church is really good, or at least we put a lot of effort into messaging something that's very powerful. We sell something huge, right? So we sit there and we go, listen, following Jesus is the best thing that's ever going to happen to you in your whole life. Nothing will ever compare. If you give your life to Jesus, if you follow him, it's going to be the biggest, most full life that you could ever experience. Never mind, it's not going to make you rich. Well, we're not talking about that yet. And you might be persecuted and people aren't going to like you because you're Christians. We'll pass over that. But it's going to be great, guys. Like, come on in. And then we just invite people to church. Like, come on. And that's not a bad thing, right? But then people come on Sunday for 60 minutes. They watch some guy on the stage wave his hands around for 30 minutes, sing some songs, drink some coffee really awkwardly, hope no one talks to them. And then they do that over and over again, right? They go home, nothing changes. They live their life Monday to Saturday, then they come to church again for 60 minutes, watch someone wave their hands again, sing some songs, and their lives don't change. And then after 6 months or a year, they give it up. Why? Because their expectations, what they were sold, doesn't match their experience. So I think a lot of people that walk away from the church, a lot of people who give up on this, haven't really experienced what following Jesus is actually about. Because if you're just coming on Sunday for 60 minutes, man, you're not following Jesus. You're just part of a club. That's what this whole series is kind of about, right? Like, yes, we need to come on Sunday morning and celebrate big and celebrate what God has been doing, but we're celebrating what's happened on Monday all the way to Saturday. And then, yes, we celebrate and we come together and we do listen to some guy wave his hands around for 30 minutes, and that's not always a bad thing, especially if it's not me. But then we also need to follow Jesus daily, our Monday to Saturday. We need to have community with a few. We need to serve one another. We need to engage in mission. And so when people decide that they want to follow Jesus, but then they just come on Sunday morning, man, that's like going to a horse show and getting sold a pony. Like, no wonder they want a refund. My conversation with Brent this week, we were kind of planning out these messages because we're preaching on the same thing. So we always want to make sure that, we're all coordinated here. And he mentioned something to me that I thought was really interesting. He said, this is Brent, in our experience here at SouthRidge, he says we found that people, if they don't get connected into a community, they usually won't last, past about a year. If someone comes and then they're following Jesus, but if all they're doing is they're just coming and celebrating with us on Sunday morning and that's it, they'll last maybe 6 months, they'll hold out, but they won't stick. They won't last past a year. So here's the thing, I want you to stay here. Like, I like having you guys here. I like getting to know you guys. I like you being a part of the church, and I really genuinely want you to thrive. I want you to do well. I want you to experience the full life that Jesus offers, because I genuinely actually believe that. I believe that if you follow Jesus, and not just a Sunday morning thing, but if you commit your life to him, and if you actually live the life that he has for you, I genuinely believe that is the best thing that you could ever experience. Yeah, maybe it won't make you rich. Not with money at least, but it's going to make you rich in your spirit. It's the best thing that you could possibly have. It's the fullest life. And I know I speak for everybody at church here. I know I speak for everybody on the staff team when I say that. But I'm going to speak for myself right now because I don't want to get anybody else in trouble. If you have been coming to SouthRidge, if you follow Jesus, if you have been here for some time and you're not a part of an intentional community where you are knowing other people but also being known, you need to get off your butt and do something about it. We just, I don't know if you saw, but we just built this wall out there, and it's pretty cool. Like, it's got like a light up map, and there's a bunch of pins where all of our groups are, so you can see like your local communities. And we got like clipboards and tablets, and you can hit a button, just fill out some information, and we'll just do all the work for you. We'll go find a group. We'll do everything. We will move every obstacle and every barrier out of the way to get you into community. We'll spend whatever money it takes. We'll make Nate do whatever we have to make this happen. We will remove every barrier we can. But at the end of the day, the single largest obstacle to you experiencing community is yourself. And I can't tie you up and drag you to a community group because that's illegal. It's a lie. that we believe in our Christian culture. It goes a little something like this. We believe that God will never give you more than you can handle, right? God will never give you, if you're just strong, and in those times of trials that you're going through, if you're just strong and you just pray and you have faith that it's all going to work out, it's all going to be okay, and that is just a straight up lie. There's nowhere in the Bible that it says that. The closest thing I could find was something along the lines of that God will never allow you to experience a temptation greater than you can withstand. But we believe this lie that, oh, you know what, like if you just have the faith, if you're just strong, that God will never put something in your path that you can't handle. It's not true. And there's a lot of you guys here today who know that that's not true. That sometimes in our life, we experience challenges that are well beyond what we actually have the capability to handle on our own. And we need people like our spouse, pets, counselors, friends, family, teachers, whatever it is. This brings me to the third thing. The third point here today. So not only were you designed for community, right? On an individual, emotional, psychological level, God put it in you. You were designed to experience community. You need that. That's the second point. But now the third point here, we were designed for community. On a physical, practical level. We were designed for community. You can find this example of community all over, but there's one particular place that I think stands out. Acts 2:44-45 says, all the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anybody who had need. Why were they supporting each other? Because there were people who had need. What a beautiful picture that is. Because there's sometimes in our lives that things go on and we actually need, right? There's too much for us to handle. There's too much on our plate. And we need other people to come alongside us, to support us, to love us, to hold us accountable, to maybe actually radically love and sacrifice for us and for others, because people are in need. We need our community to step in. I think the Apostle Paul understood that we influence other people. We need each other, and it's not just for the practical side of things too, but we need each other because we influence ourselves with how we meet each other's needs and our words, but also just with our presence. Also just with the way we encourage and love and support each other in our faith. Romans 1:11-12 says this, I long to see you so that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to make you strong. That is, that you and I may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. That we might be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. So last summer, we were at the soccer camp training night, and there was this lady who came up to me, and she doesn't actually go to the church. She's like the mother of someone who does, but she just happened to be on a Sunday that I was speaking a couple weeks before that. So she came up and she was like, oh, dear, I just loved the message that you spoke just a little while back. It was just so good. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. I thought, what was I speaking on? And then she kind of went blank and looked at me. She's like, to be perfectly honest, I don't remember. She's like, but I just love the story that you told about you and your wife. And then she starts going on, and I'm like, you don't remember the story? I was like, weren't you taking notes? And I'm like climbing up onto my high horse here, getting ready to be like, are you kidding? And then I think to myself, oh, hold on a second. I don't actually remember any of the things I've preached about either. I had a prof in college, and he said something to me. He said, people won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel, which is ironic because I remembered what he said. But so let's reword that. Okay, so people usually won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. Our presence in community encourages others in their faith. And that's why I think one of the reasons we were designed for community is because we actually need each other. We need each other to hold each other accountable, to love and encourage and support each other, because our presence, just the very presence of each other in community, encourages us in our faith. See, simply just knowing what is right and wrong isn't enough, right? Knowing what is good or bad for you doesn't automatically mean that you will do what you ought to do. Just ask any parent in the room, their kid knowing what they should or shouldn't do actually usually has very little to do with whether or not they're going to behave. And it just gets worse as they get older. When they're teenagers, just don't even tell them what's right or wrong because they're going to do the opposite just to spite you. Just knowing what's right or what's wrong or what's good or what's bad for you, that doesn't automatically mean that you are going to do what you ought to, what is good for yourself. But you are more likely to do what is good for you when you're in community. When you're with a group of people who know you, who love you, who support you, who know what you're going through, who hold you accountable, who are examples themselves in their own ways to you as you are examples to them. Who believe in you. When you're in authentic community, supporting, loving, encouraging, giving as there is need, sacrificing for people, other people will notice that. Your friends, your family, your coworkers, whoever it is, and the people that don't follow Jesus, they're going to see those people come alongside you when something goes wrong in your life, when you're struggling, when you have too much, you can't handle it all. And your community steps up and comes and sacrifices for you and comes alongside and supports and loves and encourages you. And when you do the same for them, your friends who don't follow Jesus, they're going to notice that. And they're going to be drawn to it. And here's why. There's going to be a day, as Christians we believe this, there's going to be a day when Jesus is going to return, right? He's coming back to us. We do go up to him, but then it's all coming back down. There's going to be a physical world, Garden of Eden 2.0. Some just call it heaven, some just call it a new creation. There's going to be a world here in which we will have perfect, full community. No more pain, no more lying, deceit, cheating, no more hatred. There's going to come a day when we will live in full, perfect community with one another and with God. And I think that whether people realize it or not, that every single person longs for the day that they could experience the community that they were originally designed for. That inside every person, whether or not they follow Jesus, whether or not they realize it, that God put something inside of them, that they actually long for the day that they would be able to experience that community that God designed them to be in and to experience. So what happens when others see you living that authentic community is that they want it. They're drawn to it. They're attracted to it. Think of it this way. You have a kid who comes over for a play date with your son, right? And he's raised by a super strict mom. And he's no sugar, right? This kid's just lived off of Splenda. That's the closest he's gotten to it. And so he comes over and you're just thinking, okay, here, and you give him one of those pure little sugar cubes. And you're like, here, little guy, just suck on this for a second. He puts that in his mouth. And you see the moment it hits his glands because his eyes light up. And he's just like, what is this? And he's just so pumped. And you know his mom is going to be furious when she finds out. But it was worth it because you're blowing this little kid's brain right now. And he's just so pumped because he's never tasted something so sweet. It's probably not a great illustration. But that is kind of like how we give people a glimpse of what's to come. We give them a taste of how good it's going to be. They're living off of Splenda and we're giving them pure cane sugar. Oh boy. All right, John 13, 34 to 35. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. And get this, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. This is God's plan to spread the message of Jesus to the world. And by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. See one guy on stage for 30 minutes, once a week, waving his hands around. That's not the master plan for spreading the truth, the life-giving, freedom-giving, hope-giving truth of Jesus to the world. We're the plan. We all are the plan. Our Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, living out all the discipleship rhythms, not just Sunday morning. That's not the whole plan. It's everything is the plan. The way that we love other people, the way that we do community, we give people a glimpse of the kingdom through community. Just a glimpse of what's to come when we do it right. If you're in community here today, if you're in any form of community, men's, women's, 55 plus, the shop, community groups, serving groups, whatever it is, you're the plan. Invite people. Invite people to experience how sweet it is. How much better it is than Splenda, because Splenda sucks. I'll wrap it up. Some of us here, if you haven't been taking notes or you missed something, I'm going to hit all of them right now, so get your pens out. Or if you've just been asleep the whole time and you don't want your wife to know, now's your chance, you can catch up. All right, some of us here, we need to be intentional about being vulnerable. That's me. That was me 3 days ago in my community group. I'm sitting there going, guys, I've been on autopilot. I haven't been vulnerable with my wife. I haven't been vulnerable with my friends. I'm just kind of living life, staying busy, right? I need to be more intentional about being vulnerable. That's my one, okay? So some of us need to be intentional about being vulnerable because community requires both connection and vulnerability. We need both of them or else it doesn't mean anything. Some of us here today, we need to take that first step and join a community. We put all that work into that wall. Go check it out. We need to take that first step, joining community, because we were designed, you on an individual level, were designed for community, but also we as just a group were designed, we need each other practically and also just on an encouragement level. We need each other. We were all designed for community. And then some of us finally need to start praying about inviting somebody into community. Because we give people a glimpse of the kingdom. We give people just a taste of what's to come with the way that we treat and love each other, with the way that we handle our relationships, with the way that we live in community. Let me pray for you guys. God, I pray that you would give us wisdom to know what is the thing that we need to do today. What is the step that we need to do? Wives, I pray for you now. I pray that you would have the boldness and the courage to tell your husband, hey, listen, you need to do this. Husbands, I pray that you would have the discernment and gentleness to tell your wife, hey, listen, you've been doing a great job. Here's some wine. But, maybe this is an area you could grow. Actually, never mind. Forget I even brought it up. Let's just go out. I'll take you out. Give us the wisdom to know how to hold each other accountable in our communities and give us the wisdom to do what is right for ourselves as well, and what we know we ought to do. And I pray that we would all get to experience just a taste, just a glimpse of how good it is, of what's to come. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen.